What the CRM is really there for is to help teams communicate. And that's what continuously breaks down is you have leaders from each of these different departments, whether it's marketing or sales or customer support or finance, and they all have their own individual objectives, and then they act from those objectives. So it's communication breaking down. And that can show up in a couple different ways, whether it's like how qualified a lead is before you pass it from marketing to sales or from SDRs to sales.
Every B2B podcast sounds the same. Cookie cutter strategies, corporate buzzwords, high level theory that sounds smart but changes nothing. Meanwhile, the real game changers are out there breaking every rule in the playbook and crushing it. They're not following best practices. They're building their own path and winning in the ways that experts said wouldn't work. These are the rebels you need to hear from, the ones with tactics you can actually use tomorrow. This is Burn the Playbook. Burn everything that's holding you back. Welcome in. I'm Marc Crosby. This is Burn the Playbook. My guest today is Michael Venman, the founder of The Sales Nerd, where he helps PE-backed and scaling B2B companies fix the go-to-market systems that break at growth, especially the messy intersection of sales, marketing, and CRM. He's led RevOps and built revenue engines from early stage to scale. He's the author of A Sales Funnel That Scales, available on Amazon, a practical playbook for building funnels teams actually use. Today, we're getting into why CRM adoption fails and how to create real alignment and what good enough looks like when growth is the mandate. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much, Mark. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. You started out selling, then you ended up building the systems that salespeople use today. So how did going from a sales role to managing people effectively help you build Sales Nerd and help people build their CRMs today?
Yeah, so my sales history starts by knocking on doors when I was 17. And it wasn't until after college that I became a full-time telesalesperson, and then eventually started leading a sales team like you'd mentioned. I probably took the most typical route, which is a salesperson becomes a sales manager and then realizes you don't got a revenue operations person. So really you're just there trying to figure things out. And it was within that figuring things out phase of, oh, maybe I can develop a smarter way to do this or a more process focused way to do this that'll increase revenue. That's when I sort of fell in love with operations. And yeah, well, I'm sure that we'll jump into it on this call, but really being a salesperson coming from a sales background in operations is very important to sort of my lens on go-to-market.
Yeah, it certainly helps to have that experience in the field. And as you mentioned, knocking on doors and doing it, I don't know, kind of the grassroots way as far as just learning the hard way and learning how things fail. But as far as seeing things fail and problems that you've seen, at least in sales, as far as just CRMs, what continual problems are the ones that surface the most throughout your career and all the different roles that you've ever had? What's the consistency as far as what you've seen?
Well, I mean, what the CRM is really there for is to help teams communicate. And that's what continuously breaks down is you have leaders from each of these different departments, whether it's marketing or sales or customer support or finance, and they all have their own individual objectives. And then they act from those objectives and those incentives. So it's communication breaking down. And that can show up in a couple different ways, whether it's like how qualified a lead is before you pass it from marketing to sales or from SDRs to sales, or potentially it breaks with the sales funnel definitions, what stage to stage means, or what a handoff to customer success, a good handoff looks like. Those are typically the transitions from team to team where systems break. If they're insular, if they stick within the sales team, usually those systems work. But if they go outside of those teams, that's when they break.
Gotcha. I thought that was interesting that you said that it's a communication tool. And I've actually never heard anybody say it's a communication tool, but it's actually the truth. And I imagine that at least in some of the clients and customers that you serve, do you have any issues as far as convincing executive leaders or people in sales and marketing that this is a communication tool and not just a data entry tool?
Well, that's what executives think it is it's a communication tool. It's more salespeople or more the daily users who are in the grind of using a tool like a CRM, if it's HubSpot or Salesforce, that think of it more as a data tool, where, oh, I just tried this call. I need to put in these notes or else my boss is going to kill me. That's That's how most reps see it. But when I'm in the boardrooms, or if I'm in an executive level meeting, they know it's a communication tool. That's what they're expecting of their teams. But somewhere along the way, it breaks down. Somewhere along the way, CRO needs to hold their sales leaders accountable, who then need to hold their reps accountable, and the communication doesn't get all the way to the rep as to why it's so important, as to why it's going to be a handoff to the marketing team. Oh, if you take notes and it has a keyword about a specific product that we offer, okay, I'm going to, as a marketing leader, retarget them with that product specific messaging. That may not get from a C-level meeting all the way down to the rep. And I think that's an opportunity that a lot of companies have, is to take that sort of the reasoning that comes from those executive level meetings down to the reps, so that they understand it's not just data entry, it's strategic targeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think more organizations probably need to understand it is a communication tool. It should help align sales and marketing. I think in a lot of companies, they probably just perceive it as a sales tool. This is what sales needs to do their job. And that's kind of where the buck ends. And then the CEO or vice president of sales and marketing just wants a dashboard for all the sales activities. And it should be a holistic view, I think, of the company, as far as just handoffs, alignment, win success rates, and all the KPIs that should be driven from across the organization, not just sales. But when you work with clients and you're trying to develop a RevOps and do something that they haven't done before, what do you see as far as the common problem that companies do wrong first? Like, what do they think that they need or want, and where do you direct them as far as what they should be looking at in order to develop an effective CRM and RevOps tool?
So most companies, when they start using a CRM, focus on new business sales. That's the first place that they start. So
Hmm.
they start looking at pipeline stages. Where am I getting these contacts? Which companies am I targeting? ICP personas start getting built, and then they focus on stages. Um, the next phase is marketing. It ends up being marketing. So that's where, looking at UTM values, looking at lead source structure, looking at, the marketing operational pieces, then that flowing through. So really the first step is getting your stages right, your opportunity stages right. The second step is making sure that you're targeting the right people. The third is that you deal with that first transition that most companies face from marketing into sales, that most companies just either get wrong or don't pay attention to, or maybe the marketing leader, sales leader aren't speaking the same language. And 90% of the issues that I see within companies is because sales and marketing aren't communicating um, around the specific things that they need to communicate about. Like not only the quality of a lead or the volume of leads, but the quality. That's predominantly it.
Gotcha. You talk about this, I think you called it stage zero,
Yeah.
in order
Yeah.
to address the sales and marketing pointing fingers at each other. So tell me a little
Uh-huh.
bit more about that.
So stage zero is something I came across maybe maybe around 5 years ago. Yeah, I'm surely not the first person to talk about it. Because especially now as I walk into new projects, they already know about this idea. It's an architectural idea of, especially those who use Salesforce are familiar with leads and contacts. If you use HubSpot, it's just contacts. But it's very difficult to track the funnel across multiple objects. So if you have leads coming in, they're passed as a lead or contact, then an SDR calls on it and they move it to a certain stage, which then says, okay, now an account executive calls out on it, and the account executive takes the call and then qualifies it. That's when they create the deal. Um, it's really hard to see this SDR handoff portion within the funnel metrics. So stage zero is when we create the opportunity or the deal, if you're in HubSpot, when the SDR hands the opportunity to the salesperson. That way you can track how many meetings were scheduled, as well as how many of those meetings were qualified, and then what ended up happening from those meetings that the SDR scheduled. For very high transactional systems, I've also seen as soon as an MQL comes in, you create an opportunity. I've also seen that. I would not recommend it if you are targeting midsize or enterprise. But if you're doing SMB, that's one way to do it. but Mark, I'm always surprised by how many different ways there are to build these revenue systems. Um, I'm all I don't think there's ever going to be a shortage of different ways to construct a way to think about developing a life cycle. Um, but yeah, that's stage zero. Have you ever seen that, Mark?
Not really. I mean, as far as just, I mean, you talk a lot about some of the definitions there. I think you kind of threw out a lot of terms that you could probably spend days, if not weeks on, as far as just defining what a lead is, what is an opportunity, when is a handoff. So aside
Hmm.
from at least building the systems, how long does it take to get everybody in a room and agree on what the definition of a lead and an opportunity is in its simplest nature, and how many arguments, I guess, come out of that?
So many. I mean, it's such a cultural thing. It's a company culture thing. It's whether the marketing team's job is to send everyone who went to an event to the SDR team to follow up, or if that's just the first step in the marketing journey of, the next step is down the funnel and they attended a webinar. Now I need to send them case studies. And if they engage with that, that's when the SDR should reach out. Um, but it ends up being very cultural. Um, I've seen a lot of companies just recognize, okay, this person came in and they expressed any level of interest, send them. That ends up not being a very good play, uh, because the marketing team can say, well, I handed so many leads. And it's the oldest thing in the book. Sales says, yeah, but they're not qualified. Um, so, man, that happens way too often. Um, the the best way to get around that is to define what the quality of a lead is. Usually, it's by two of the four band: budget, authority, need, timeline. If you're able to access that they have the authority and they have and they have a need, that's usually enough to pass a lead from an SDR to an account executive. Um, when it comes to, what is an MQL, what is a lead that marketing's been working that, you know, hands can get handed off to the SDR or the AE, it's cultural. It's cultural more often than not. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that when you go from one client to the next, you're having those same discussions all over again because their culture and their definitions are completely different. But is it aligning to, I guess, what your beliefs are as far as what a good lead is, or just aligning in general as far as what everybody can agree on?
I think when I work with my clients, there's not one size fit all situation. So you really have to address where they are starting, which is usually what I do. Where are you starting? And then taking sequential steps to get to where they inevitably want to be. You don't eat an elephant in one bite. You do it bite at a time. Who's eating elephants? I don't know, but I think that's saying. So the best in practice that I've seen is generally you'll have two different grades and one score, to define whether or not someone is qualified. So you'll have an ICP fit. That's ideal client profile. Is the company a company that I want as a customer? Um, and usually you'll have A, B, C, D there. Then you'll have a persona, grade. So is this a buying persona, a technical persona, an economic buyer, all those things, which then come with different sort of needs down the marketing strategy. But if they are not a good person at a good company, well, then they have to be really interested, which is where it comes to the lead score. They have to be really interested. They almost had to fill out the demo form twice, if they're not a good fit for me to reach out. But if they're a really good fit, ideal customer profile, grade A, they are the right type of buyer, they are the right type of persona, then I may only need to recognize a little bit of interest in order for them to qualify as an MQL. So by having those three fields and those three automations, ICP fit, grade, persona fit, grade, and then a lead score, which is derived by how they're interacting with your company's website or emails or webinars, whatever it is. Um, the combination of those and the discussions that come from that is how you really create alignment.
So when you have this alignment, okay, let's just say you go into a client and everyone's, we're all in sync as far as singing from the same sheet of music, sales and marketing. We all agree on what a lead is. Tell me what a good before and after looks like. Maybe just on your client history, because I always struggle because I hear all the problems, whether it's on LinkedIn or another podcast, and no one seems to be able to figure out CRM and what good looks like. And all I hear is just horror stories. I never actually heard of a company that does it right. So tell me maybe a client that you've worked with that, you helped them go from all the typical problems with CRM to what good looks like.
So I'll start with leads specifically. Worked with one customer. They had leads coming in, but weren't tracking what the next stage was after that. And we were able to recognize, okay, leads come in, and then a certain percentage of them immediately become disqualified because the account executives, or the SDRs at this company, were researching and immediately seeing that they weren't part of the ideal customer persona. They weren't a buyer. They worked at the right company, but they weren't a buyer. They were a user. So right there, we were able to eliminate 50% of the leads that came in by recognizing the persona and then incorporating that into the routing. What that means for SDRs is, instead of getting 50 leads a day, they're getting 20, which means they can focus their time and their energy on 20 leads instead of spreading it across 50. So obviously a time saving there. They can do more outbound, whatever it is. Another is, I can think of another company. We had a lot of conversations around when to close lost an opportunity, which I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on too, Mark. But these companies were never disqualifying these opportunities because they had hope. They had hope that, this one will close. I swear, even if it'll take 3 years, they're going to eventually buy. But what that was doing was it was handcuffing the marketing team. The responsibility within a system is generally, if it's in an account executive's name and they got an open opportunity, marketing, don't touch it. What's that Glenn Ross quote? If you don't know the shot, shut up. Something like that. I butchered it. So if the salespeople are sort of maintaining control, then it doesn't allow other teams to take part. And what we did there was we convinced them to close lost those opportunities. We update the contacts so that marketing is able to recognize the baton was actually handed back to them, and that marketing should be responsible for filling out the decision-making unit and targeting them with specific messaging that was associated to the close lost reason of the opportunity. So it's about creating these feedback loops, which then allow teams to create automated processes that just, like those 90s infomercials, set it and forget it. Remember that one?
Yeah. Well, that was an oven or something, right?
Yeah. Very happy.
I remember it. Yeah, I think that's probably the problem with some of the CRMs and even the automation tools, is that you hope that you can just set it and forget it. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that just rely on the dashboards in order to give them all this information. And, we had a great discussion with Kian McLaughlin on one of the last episodes about win-loss and the reasons why we win-lose, and also the reasons why you should probably do a little bit more post-analysis and even through the buying process, just to make sure that you're not having deals that are essentially stuck on the funnel. And I think they get stuck on the funnel for that one reason that you already alluded to, which is hope, and thinking like, oh man, if we just could get a lower price, or if we can just multi-thread a little bit better, or if we can come out with a better product, or whatever the excuse is, like if it's been there for a certain period of time, have an agreement internally that deal is dead and just kill it. And also, when you do align, once again, going back to the terminology that we talked about in the beginning, what is the reason why, and have a discussion about the reason why, and make sure that between you, your sales manager, and anybody else that touched that deal, that we're not just checking a box and moving on. Because if we're going to have data integrity, we actually need to have more specific reasons as to why that deal did die, or even why we won. But that's a whole nother episode.
And don't forget that. Don't forget that why we won. I mean, many people are used to having a loss reason.
Hmm.
or a nurture reason or a remarket reason. Those are for
Hmm.
context. It's not now. You put in a reason. Um, Nobody's really used to having a win reason. It's like the dark space of the reporting. So, making sure that after a closed won deal happens, that you have or a closed loss deal, that there is a meeting once a week where people review, hey, I lost this deal. That's okay that you lost the deal. No one's going to punish you.
Hmm.
It's not a bad thing to lose a deal. It's just another piece of data that we have then to use in our iterations. But to have those conversations again, because it's a CRM really is a communication tool,
Hmm.
to not avoid having that meeting, to not avoid those maybe tough discussions of maybe a team dropped the ball, or maybe your targeting wasn't right, or maybe the product didn't have this specific piece,
Hmm.
or maybe the pricing's off. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
you got to be honest with yourself. I mean, you also have to have that, I think, culture of psychological safety, because I think that's also part of the reason why deals get stuck, is because if I move this to a closed loss for whatever reason, maybe I'll lose my job. And if I have too many of those, then maybe I'm going to get, shown the door as far as just reasons why deals get lost. But I think it's also just for, as an organization, being honest of why you're losing and also why you're winning, doubling down on the reasons why you win, and making sure you're refining at least maybe some processes or reasons why you lost. But at least keeping track of it at the end of the day, I think, is important.
and that's all RevOps is. That's all RevOps is just recognizing patterns and creating new processes to, you know, um, automate what you can. Sorry.
Gotcha. No, no, you're good. One of the other things about that too is in my corporate career, I always saw that everyone put in opportunities and very few people put in risk. And I think it's just also going back to being honest about, could you possibly lose the business at some point in time? Like if you sign a 3-year deal with a customer at some point, especially even after you do that, it's potentially at risk. And I've seen some imbalance in Salesforce as far as having all the opportunities and everyone painting a great picture as far as it being rosy, but not being honest about what business could be at risk, or having those contract dates put in CRM as far as when we should be probably getting ahead of this. I can't tell you how many times, we've gotten close to a contract date and then we're firefighting as far as how do we save this business, or what should we do to, sign another deal. But is that something that comes up, at least in your discussions, as far as just the opportunities for risk or for churn, and making sure that that piece is well documented into
Yeah.
CRM?
Well, yeah. So remember when I said when a company really start to think about operational integrity or governance, they go in a specific order. It's new business sales, new business marketing, then renewals. Um, and they start to think about customer success, and they start to think about, what is the client risk, or what is the churn risk? How am I measuring churn risk? What's working, what's not? What concessions do I need to make? And how all of that's tracked. That absolutely comes up. And again, that's just nobody wants a vitamin; they want a painkiller. So it's gonna it's gonna become a topic of conversation when it's too late. And it's by building those processes and by creating that visibility, and like you said, emotional safety. I need to be able to ask for help in my company, that you really start to see measurable impacts.
Does it matter what like system you're using? I know you support Salesforce and HubSpot. Does it really matter what the tool is or the platform, or is it more about processes and making sure that the process are really good?
Uh, ooh, if I could only have one, the software or the process, probably go with the process. Um, I think, Salesforce is really good. When I started my career working with Salesforce, maybe 15 years ago, um, Salesforce was the big gorilla in the room, and to some extent still is for enterprise. But HubSpot's done an amazing job getting closer and closer. And as AI builds out more softwares, which is where we're going to go, um, Salesforce or HubSpot won't be the only choices for very long. In a couple of years, you'll be able to create a software by doing a prompt. So the software is going to matter less and less for smaller businesses. But I think Salesforce and HubSpot have the infrastructure now to maintain processes in a way that if you used maybe Zoho or Microsoft Dynamics or some of these other systems, may not. So I think a system is important to create visibility and restrict actions. so that you have to walk on this line. You cannot deviate. Um, I think that's important. But without a process, what is opportunity pipeline? What is opportunity pipeline without a process? If you don't have stage gating, what does a pipeline tell you? It's you know, sticking your finger up in the air. That's why you
Yeah.
need process.
Yeah, process is very important. I mean, you could argue that if you have a solid process, you could probably, run your CRM on an Excel spreadsheet, even though that I would not advocate that. But I mean, if you have a solid process as far as just communication, everyone's on the same page, you shouldn't need a fancy tool and unless you have a solid foundation. And then I think as we try to layer on AI, which is the hope that a lot of companies, I think, is that AI is going to solve a lot of these foundational problems. If you don't have clean data and if you don't have a process, then the outputs are probably going to be tremendously worse than what you probably already have. If the analysis is based on lies or lack of information too.
AI doesn't fix process. It reflects the system that you have.
Hmm.
So, I think um, as teams start to use processes, they're going to get more tactical. What I'm seeing with AI right now in go-to-market systems is they're very tactical. I want to take my gong recordings, I want to put them in the system and fill out my medic, right? Fill out the pieces of information that my team is needing me to fill out. Or I want to create a marketing campaign infrastructure for this specific play, and there's AI that can do that. Or create this UTM infrastructure, or I want to email a bunch of people all with custom things. These are all very tactical pieces that you plug into different parts of the funnel. You plug into different, as as a way to automate activities that will help each stage. Um, if those stages are not solid, then you'll build it. You'll build that AI thing. You'll build this tool. You'll integrate everything, and then 6 months later, the process will change.
Hmm.
And all of that automation that you just built now turns into technical debt. Poof, the world has changed. You're struggling to breathe and you're underwater. And that's what I end up seeing all the time at companies is they had a smart idea, they built a company around it, they overinvested in tooling and automation and tried to make everything one specific, can only be done one way because this is our process. And the process changes just a little. And then there's just this mountain of technical debt that they've overbuilt and overengineered their system. So now even a small change um, topples the tower. Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things you mentioned there was gong recordings, and for those that don't know, they're just basically it's recording call transcripts and things like that. And there's other versions of that, like a Fathom or an Otter, or Teams and Zoom. They all have some sort of transcript availability, but there's some large organizations that don't enable that for their teams as far as recording calls, recording transcripts, and things like that, just for security and privacy restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, I guess, I don't know, do you talk about that at all with clients as far as, or do you see that as far as not leveraging transcripts and calls and some of those other qualitative data points from customer insights to pull into RevOps?
Yeah. I mean, it is a treasure trove of data that few teams are utilizing, whether it's for security reasons. And we can talk about that for days. Um, AI presents a bunch of new security risks that the systems aren't necessarily designed for. Um, but no, not, a lot of teams aren't using it. And when you think about call preparation or you think about developing an account strategy, especially when it's across a large decision-making unit, let's say you're selling enterprise and you have 5 people, 10 people that you're talking to, coordinating your notes between all 10, that's hard. That's hard. That takes brain energy. You can do that for maybe 15, 20 accounts, maybe 30, but like really hard. That's where AI can step in and give an account summary based on the conversations that you've had with the team, when you had them, how they reference each other, give you ideas, iterate on those ideas, and help you prepare for calls. That saves hours and time. And really, that's, again, what we do in RevOps is save time.
Well, that should be the idea. And I think today, I don't know, managing the CRM, entering calls, for at least for me, it's been easier than ever because, everything's kind of automated in the background as far as the transcript getting uploaded to HubSpot, and I don't even have to, type anything in. But I think, if more companies at least have a strategy, have I don't know, a strategy for security and making sure that the information is gathered in a way that's appropriate, it should be easier than ever. But I don't know. That's a whole nother discussion.
You know where it's hard? You know where it's hard?
Yeah.
A lot of companies are using Telegram, or some do. There are methods of communication that are outside of the historical Zoom calls or calls or emails, phone calls or emails. WhatsApp is also very hard to get into the system. So there are specific methods of communication where the automation is not quite there yet. I've seen, but leaps and bounds since I was cold calling. Back in the day, I
Yeah.
had a phone book. So
Well, even the simple things as far as just emailing through a CRM, those capabilities aren't available for every business either. But that's the low hanging fruit. I mean, as far as emailing through Outlook, and then you have a separate CRM and they're not connected, that's a treasure
that
trove worth
that's a tragedy.
the.
That's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. That makes my heart hurt. That and click to call. If you don't have,
Yeah.
if you're in a CRM and you don't have click to call yet, that's another way to help the sales team. That's low hanging fruit. Call transcripts get logged, calls get logged, so you have touch activity. Helps the sales team, saves them time, gives you call dispositions so that you're able to see this person made 10 calls, 5 of them he connected, 3 of them they went to voicemail, 2 of them was told to pound sand.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, opportunities abound, but I'm sure that those opportunities will keep you busy as far as finding new clients. But let's pivot over to our Burn It or Build It segment. I'm going to give you 10 rapid fire topics, mostly about RevOps. So we will start with number 1. More data equals better decisions.
false. I'd say burn it. More data isn't always good data. You need a process. You need a way to put context behind your data. If you don't, then you're going to end up making the wrong decision.
Agreed. Bad data doesn't necessarily mean better decisions. Number 2.
More good data, better decisions. More good data, better decisions, for sure.
Well, that's, I guess, another debate for back to the beginning of this, as far as, making those clear definitions as far as labels and what is a lead, what is an opportunity, close, win, loss, and yada, yada, yada. Number 2, number 2, slow down great salespeople.
I'd say burn it. I think there are some salespeople that just run, that can work by themselves, right? But any salesperson needs to be part of a team. And again, a team works with certain agreements, and there need to be rules. There need to be rules of engagement for what you're going to throw over the fence. So I think it may slow great reps, but inevitably the value that you're going to create is lower. So you don't get what you want.
Agreed. Number 3, common problem for businesses: when revenue is stuck, just hire more salespeople.
Hey, I've tried that. Have you tried that? Doesn't work so
Well,
good.
This kind of goes back to more data or equals better decisions. If it's bad data or maybe even bad reps, they're just going to compound the problems. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah. Hiring salespeople may increase revenue, but it won't make you profitable necessarily. There's generally, if you're not making enough revenue, it's because the conversions from funnel stage to funnel stage are not optimized. And until you start looking at it like that, hiring more salespeople is like throwing money into an ads account that isn't producing any leads.
Agreed. Number 4, we did talk a little bit about this as far as the right tools, but the tech stack is the strategy.
I think the strategy is the strategy. The tech stack is how you get there. Saying the destination is Disney World, and then there are many different ways to get to Disney World. You can fly, you can drive, you can walk. It'll take longer, but the destination is the same. I think the tech stack is an easy excuse for leaders who need an excuse, but it is not a strategy make.
Agreed. Got to have a good foundation. Number 5, sales and marketing are just never going to agree.
That, I've seen it work. I've seen sales and marketing teams work together, and it is possible. It is hard. because it takes an agreement between, the quality of leads, which it takes marketing agreeing to a certain level of quality of leads, whether that's a certain percentage get to SAL or SQL from MQL, or a certain percentage of them get to what I'd call a hero pipeline. I took that from another leader in the space, but basically pipeline generated by marketing only counts if it hits a stage where there's an expected 25% close rate. That's the only time it works. So they don't get to count the pipeline that is just junk pipeline. So that creates the alignment, and that's when sales and marketing do function together. So I'd say,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Good take there. You probably develop a lot of dashboards. So if everyone can see the scoreboard, people step up, burn it or build it.
I think if the CEO sees the dashboard and uses it, if the leader uses it, then the rest of the team will follow. There's no starting at a rep and starting at a manager and having it go up the food chain. It needs to start at the top. And accountability needs to come from whatever visibility is there. So
Gotcha.
if that's there, then, just making something visible doesn't change anything. You actually need the force of will to make that change.
Agreed. Number 7, a great team will beat a great process every single time.
A great team will build a great process. No, I mean, some people are not process people, and they can build a great team, and each of them can function together. But once it starts to scale, that's when you need the process. So I think maybe a team of a certain size can live without a process, but once you get to a larger size, you need that process.
Yeah, I think you see this in sports. I mean, you see a lot of great teams that are good on paper, and they just can't get to the championship. And there's other teams that don't have those great players that they follow a process, and they're all just there to give their best every single day, and they can win championships. But I don't know. That's another debate too. Number 8, one leader should own sales, marketing, and customer success.
I think that's a big job. I think that's a very big job. I think at some point when the company gets large enough, the teams get large enough, you should have that specialty around the chief customer officer. That's the person in charge of, once they're a customer, how they're treated. Chief revenue officer, how we're bringing people into the door, and all those anything that produces revenue, and then the chief marketing officer. That role can be a very technical role too. So the stratification is really there. That one leader would be the CEO in that case. So I have seen a CRO handling both the customer and the revenue piece. But I think marketing deserves a seat at that executive table because using them as a person to position the company is invaluable.
Yeah, I think the idea there is to eliminate finger pointing. So if you just roll them up under one person, then somehow that eliminates, sales and marketing, pointing fingers at each other, and you have one person at least that can wrangle the two in. But I don't know. It's debatable. Who knows? And it probably depends on the size of the business, and it also probably depends on your processes. And if those are broken, then it doesn't matter who's leading anything.
And if two people on your fighting, well, that's a different problem. They shouldn't be fighting. That's a person selection problem. It's not inevitable that marketing and sales are going to butt heads. It's again a consequence of the culture.
And there's alignment issues. That's a whole other, I think, episode that we'll probably put together at some point as far as just what problems are we solving, because it's typically you think you have a problem and you think you know the solution, but it could be something that's indirectly affecting your systems and your processes and your people and all the above. Yeah. Number 9, the simpler the operation, the faster the growth. So just fewer tools, simplicity, fewer meetings, fewer stage wins, just really just keeping it simple, burn it or build it.
I'd say build it. I think the fewer processes that are necessary, the better. And you should really pick the ones that you want to focus on, and not stage gate everything and not create a really in-depth process for everything that doesn't need one. So simpler is better always. It's just that at a certain scale, you can't do something consistently without those processes, without those operations.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Today, you get the final word. If you had to give a CEO one move that they can make today to improve CRM adoption and data quality, what would it be?
Actually use the CRM. Don't
Just use it.
yeah, just use it. You know, if you're focused on dashboards and you have, for each leader that you talk to, you're talking about a different set of KPIs and a different dashboard, that's the problem. You know, focus on fewer KPIs, focus on fewer key dashboards, and make sure you look at them and are actioning off of what you see. If you never action, then even though you have the visibility there, no one's going to feel the threat of that action. No one's going to feel the impact of a potential thing. So they're not going to make any changes. So my advice here is just use the CRM. Really focus on what you're going to focus on. Really get those blinders on and then use it. And only once you use it can you expand the scope of what you're looking at.
Gotcha. It makes sense. Just use it. Final words from Michael. Where can they find more about your work and in your book?
Yeah. So you can go to thesalesnerd.com. I write quite often. I enjoy writing and geeking out about everything sales ops, RevOps, sales strategy, that sort of thing. And also love to connect. So if you have any questions or if something I've written has inspired a thought, just reach out. Would love to talk and geek out.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining Burn the Playbook. That's how you burn the playbook. If this conversation fired you up, don't let it end here. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Share this episode with someone who's tired of playing by the old rules. And if you're ready to challenge your own sales approach, let's connect. Find me on LinkedIn at Marc Crosby or head to digitalrebelsconsulting.com to see how we help B2B teams win differently. Until next week, keep burning what's not working and keep building what is.